one of the lines in there was do something every day that scares you. And I always kind of took that as, and those moments when you have to do something uncomfortable are the most, I think I look at it, those are those moments when, it might scare you. It might be something that doesn't feel right, because you want to protect yourself, you want to protect your interest, you want to take care of it. And it, sometimes those things are, those are the big scaries.
Yeah.
And I've learned to kind of like lean into those and say, this is just that. It's just, you got to do something. Sometimes, every day we're probably going to be faced with something that just doesn't feel comfortable to do, but we got to confront it and face the hard.
Dishonesty, disrespectful, discrimination, detached, dismissive. That's it. I'm done. Relationships can be messy. Are you having trouble with your personal or professional relationship? Not to worry. As a relationship therapist and coach for over 25 years, I have a lot to share, and so will my guest experts. Let's get smarter in our business and personal lives so we can be our best selves. Now, let's get on with the show. So, you know that I'm all about real life people doing life, in business and at home, going through problems in both places and understanding the type of mindset it takes to persevere when problems arise. I mean, as they inevitably always do. And what this particular guest has learned from just going through life's trials. Um, because despite the persona that all of us show up as, we all have our mental and emotional health to think about and deal with on a daily basis. And as always, relationships are everything. And what we touched on a bit today was the soft skills, for example, of communication, with both which both Dave and I feel needs to be cultivated more in society, and how I personally believe is directly related to heightening our ability to use our imagination and to be open to curiosity and understanding the various perspectives of how to approach any given situation in life. It's not like not at all like all or none game. It's not either or. I say this over and over. Um, Soft skills are 100% needed, especially in this day and age, and especially with, I think, some fear of, AI taking over, for example. Um, so meet Dave Murray. He's Chief Business and Communication Officer at Invectus Sovereign, which is a fund that's committed to raising private equity to support renewable energy production. So if you're somebody that's interested in global warming or concerned about the fragility of our natural resources, you will be interested to see what this fund aims to do. Um, this we touched on this right at the end, but for example, one thing that the fund is aiming to do, what the company is aiming to do, is building industrial business parks using sustainable resources to do it, because they care about the environment. And also, only accepting businesses into the park who are businesses that are aligned with their mission. So, yeah, just interesting stuff, all related to business and personal lives. Okay, with that, let's get on with the show. Welcome back to Mixing Business with Pleasure, and I am your host, Luella Yonk. So today I have with me David Murray, and I'm just going to start by asking you, David, what's a typical day like for you at Invectus? Am I
Oh, it's
pronouncing any of that
Invictus.
right?
No, Invictus. It's okay. Invictus
Invictus.
Soccer.
Sovereign. Yes. Okay.
Yes.
So, well, actually, before I ask you, like, I'm just gonna say that. Oh, like, let me see here if I can bring it up. Um, what? What? No, I was gonna say like, if
You're
I
gonna
if
put me on the spot, aren't you?
yeah, no, no, if I was going to read your bio, I was going to read your bio. Wait, right here, I have it right now. Just one second.
Okay.
Not your bio exactly, but when I asked you what your responsibilities were, like I
Mhm.
was like, "Oh, is that it?" Because you say include, business development, strategic planning, revenue generation, operational oversight, investor relations, marketing, and interfacing with government entities, business leaders, and strategic partners. And is that it? Is that all?
That's about it. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's it. That's it.
Okay.
I think that
So,
covers the gamut.
so what does a typical day look like for you then, David?
Well, Luella, first of all, thank you for having me. It's
Oh,
wonderful to be on the podcast and getting a chance to talk about something that I think, as I get a bit older, becomes more important, and that is how we do things better.
mm-hmm.
So I appreciate it very much. So my typical day is probably not common to a lot of things. I'm in this space where I'm an entrepreneur, and so I have my own, I guess, modalities about how I go through the day. I get up, I get, get up, try to get up as early as I possibly can. I catch up on the day. I like having that kind of that quiet time, which I think, a lot of people talk about having that hour or two to just settle into the day before the rest of the world gets going.
Yeah.
And that's important to me. It's important to kind of clear my mind because every day a million things are going to come at me, and I'm going to have to decide which fire I want to put out. And I
Mm.
think starting the day earlier and having a sense of what I want to do helps me prepare so that when the things are coming at me, I know kind of how to, okay, I got to get these things done today with whatever else comes at me. So that's kind of how I go about my day. And I mean, right now we're truly in the, in the a space of where, as the list you just read, that's probably typical. Any entrepreneur out there can, I think, relate to that kind of a list. You have to do it all. You have to be a jack of all trades. Of course, you have your own strengths, your own things, your own superpowers, if you will. But I think the willingness to be able to take on different things, especially when um, a project is in its infancy, or you are trying to bring different groups together, you have to take on. I think you have to take on different things, and you have to be willing to just tackle the things and get the work done. Because at the end of the day, the work's got to get done. And if in our case, we've got a group of great um, general partners, but there's just a few of us, and so we're tackling a lot of things as we bring on different groups to handle sections of our companies. And as we continue to grow, then we'll turf some of that out. But right now, it's kind of an all hands on deck. And so my day revolves around starting that out, and then usually into meetings and whatever ends up coming up today. My family's incredibly important, and so if my kids need something or do I'm trying to work around their schedules as well, and be there for whatever they need. And then by at some point I like to fit a workout in, and I'm at this point in my life right now where it's sometimes it's in the morning if I don't have a busy morning, sometimes it's in the middle of the day, sometimes it's in the evening. I'm sure there are those out there who say, "Oh, you need to be more consistent on the time of day," but I figure it's just, I got to get in a workout when I can get in a workout, or go for a walk or do something. And that's about it. And then,
Okay.
I like to read a lot. So I'm another one where I try to make time for that. I'm,
Yeah.
yeah, I,
Okay.
so that's a place to start.
Right, that's a place to start. Okay, so and were you always interested in sustainable energy? Because I mean, I love the idea of, that's the type of investments that you guys are going after. That sounds amazing.
The short answer is no. I think
Okay.
it's been, I think it's my career is I think if you read my deep into my bio and my background, I'm kind of a mutt at this point as far as like my different experiences. I started out in broadcast news,
Mm.
um, where I started at the low level and worked my way up to running our newsroom, and so news and covering the events of the day, that was always important to me, and making sure that people knew what was going on. Also holding power to account. I mean, that was part of the mission of news is making sure that things that the it it's the fourth estate, and it was supposed to keep check of government powers. I'm not going to get into a discussion of news today because I don't know that what we see a lot of is news. Actually,
Yeah.
it's more talk show. It's more talk show stuff. There's still plenty of news out there, but it's a lot of talk show stuff. So then that
Mhm.
progressed into, um, this is going to sound interesting. I actually became a stay-at-home dad for about 4 or 5 years. I left the workplace, left my career in broadcasting. My wife and I, we weren't, we had one on the way, and we're raising our son, and our nanny was raising our son. We're like, this isn't going to work. And she's a professional, and it just made the most sense. My hours were crazy. And so that was probably, and will probably always be, the best job I've ever had.
Wow.
Hardest job I've ever had, by bar none. And I have the utmost respect for moms, and especially moms who are working and trying to balance that out. And it's I kind of threw myself into it and said, hey, let's see what we can do. Oh,
Yeah.
doggy, hi, doggy.
Yeah. Guest appearance.
Yeah,
Ruby.
guest appearance. Who's that?
That's Ruby.
Ruby. All right.
Ruby. Yeah. So no, that's
That's uncommon. It was uncommon. Probably at the time it was very uncommon. I think I surprised a lot of people, but it actually was wonderful. And so then right after that, is kind of as the kids were getting a little bit older and getting to school. That's when I started my first entrepreneurial endeavor, and so I got into entrepreneurship. It's about 20 plus years now,
wow.
um, and that's where I jumped in. And so to your
Yeah.
original question is, did I always get into it? No. So I have watched my kids grow up. I have two very passionate kids. I have one in particular who's very passionate about animals and the environment. And so for me, I've always been interested,
Yeah.
and I think, my partners and I would probably all say the same thing: is here we find ourselves at this place where we actually have an opportunity to make an impact. And
Yeah.
I didn't think I would be here. I didn't go to school going, okay, I'm going to do this thing. I'm passionate, and I'm not saying that's a bad. I'm glad there are those people out there. I
Yeah.
just have kind of fallen into it. Um, and I couldn't be more excited about where we are right now and the opportunity we have to really make, I think, some significant, um, dents in some of our problems. We
Mm.
one of our portfolio companies is a company that I actually, was introduced to like almost a decade ago,
Mm.
and I was blown away by what they were doing. And then we went through COVID and everything else, and kind of everything happened, and we ended up acquiring them.
Oh.
And so, we're excited about that. That's kind of I don't know if it's the impetus so much as it was the reason for a lot of what's happening right now. They are, now our company, it's American Spec Industries.
Mm.
It's taking waste products from dumps, from landfills, and
Mm.
turning them into infrastructure products. So waste to worth. Right.
Wow.
So taking 60% of what sits in a landfill and turning it into, in our initial products, our rail ties, uh, uh, power poles, or utility poles, and marine pilings. Was kind of our first venture in. The company did, some initial, rail ties, quite a few of them actually, and really kind of perfected the methodologies. And they're amazing. I mean, they are the tensile strength of steel. They don't rot. They're fireproof. They're essentially fireproof, uh, mold proof, vermin, termite proof, and non toxic. And
Wow.
so this is something that we feel is like really, really important across the board because its impact could be, significant. Not only are we tackling our waste problem, which we obviously have a considerable one in the world, but we're also taking stuff that is single use product. So
Mm-hmm.
this, and we're turning it into a cradle to cradle product. So, you take your plastic bag, it's a single use, most likely going to end up in a landfill. That's it. We're
Yeah.
taking that and then putting this product, and this product it can be used and continuously recycled in perpetuity.
Mm.
And so we're excited about that. So that's kind of
Yeah.
how this whole pathway for me happened, is that here we are. And I spent the last 2 years doing a lot in AI.
Yeah.
Again,
Yeah.
it's been a very, very career. And so seeing what's going on in the world of AI and the energy needs and our brittle grid here in the U.S. anyway.
Yeah.
There's lots of things where we said, let's not just tackle this one thing. Let's shoot for the stars and tackle a lot of these things all at once and see where we can solve some of these bigger problems while doing what we want to do. So that's
So
kind of how it got me to today.
would you also invest in those startup companies that are all about well, that are AI based then as well, or is it just
Our
no?
fund, as it's set up right now, I think personally we're very interested, but I think our
Yeah.
fund right now is directed towards sustainable
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
sustainability.
Yeah. Yeah. So
And
does that,
there's a lot of companies out there doing it.
well,
In that space right now. So yeah,
yeah, yeah, thankfully.
yeah.
Because like, yeah, no, I mean, do you get excited like about getting up for work then because of sort of the mission? Because I think the
Yes,
mission is so important. Yeah.
yes, yes, very much so. It's definitely turned into a why for me, and it's definitely we've got to do this. We've got to get this done. And
Mm,
I just didn't think in my life, in my 50s,
yeah.
that I'd have an opportunity to really be involved in something this big again. I've had some opportunities younger and things that made a difference in people's lives. And I
Mm,
just didn't think, I thought, I've done my thing and okay. And I'm at that, I, along with my partners, are at that doorstep again. And we're saying we really do have an opportunity to make this work. And we're going forward. And to your point, or to your question, yeah, I get up every morning and I'm excited to tackle this
yeah.
and see what we can do. So
Yeah. Well, personally, I feel like, I mean, I believe all in divine timing, like things that don't make sense to us years ago. It was all there for a reason. We've all learned either through contrast or, what we don't like or what we do like. And it makes sense when you look back, but like in times of uncertainty as well, right? We're like, COVID and I mean, in this sort of space that you work with, there's a whole lot of uncertainty and there's a whole lot of faith and trust. I'm sure that you need to um, cultivate, and also like maybe you can speak a little bit about the relationships that you build with some of these founders and how important that is for you.
well, I think it's all about relationships.
Yeah.
I uh, they've been everything to me in my life. I think I probably took them for granted as I was younger. Like, oh, I just have friends and I have this circle of people and I just go about my day. And you would hear that like, oh no, you need to, you know, you need to make sure you have these relationships. And at the time, I always felt like it was so transactional that
Mhm.
I didn't like it. It felt dirty to me.
Mhm.
And I think again, as I've gotten older and aged and gone through life, my relationships have been everything to me. And I don't, I think there are probably the gamut of people out there, or the range of people out there. For me, a relationship has to be a relationship. Like I want to like the person. I want to,
Mhm.
enjoy time with them. I still don't like the transactional relationships.
Yeah.
I never have, and I never will. I want meaningful, valuable relationships. I mean, we have so many minutes on earth. And so I
Yeah.
want those interactions to mean something. So
Mhm.
that's kind of how
Mhm.
I approach relationships. And that's how, and they've been, again, they've been everything. And they're really, whether it's in the business world or any other field, your relationships and your network and the people you can count on are critically important. And that doesn't mean that you have to have thousands of friends or colleagues.
No.
I think you could have a group of very like a couple of people, and if there are those people for you, fantastic.
Mhm, mhm. So how do you keep the relationship strong and close to you, like in terms of the companies that you've invested in? Like what's sort of the strategy behind that? Like how do you
Well, I think it's staying available and staying interested,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And instead of, hey, I need you to report into me, or I need you to let us know what's going on, it's a no. I want to know. Let's
Yeah.
schedule some time so you can tell me what's going on, not as a I'm requiring a report. I
Yeah.
I think it's just changing the mindset of how you view a partner company. It's
Yeah.
you could say, oh well, we're invested and they need to report to us, and we're working. I mean, any group that you're gonna in any company you're gonna invest in, um, or any company you're gonna run, you just have to invest in the relationship and the people and want to be interested in what they're doing, and it takes time and work and like
Yeah.
genuine interest.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and I think again, it tends to become transactional, and so
Mm.
I think I have to remind myself, and we have to remind ourselves, is that these we're there for them to help
Mhm.
them succeed, not the other way around.
Right, right. Oh yeah, 100%. And how about like in terms of like do you make it well known that you're very interested in any of their doubts and their fears and how they're, how you welcome conversations like that into the room?
I mean, everybody's different. I would say that, I mean, we're all human beings, and we all
Yeah.
have we all have the same stuff, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
as different as we think we are, we're not.
Right.
And it's better when we can actually be transparent about the wins and the failures. And a failure is just as important as a win in my
Yeah.
book. I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
and that's probably we probably don't embrace failure enough and say, no, that's just this is part of like making things better, is just
Mm-hmm.
learning what doesn't work. And I think there's so much fear around failure,
Yeah.
and I think this is probably cultural. It's a
Yeah.
lot of big stuff, and you got to like get through it, because you're like, no, I got to win, I got to. No, I
Yeah.
mean, everybody does, and there's so many veneers put
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
on life, and that's not reality.
Right. Well, it's funny you speak about this because I was also thinking a lot about, when you talk about age, and I'm in the mid 50s as well, and it's
Cheers.
yeah, exactly. 100%. It's to me it's the glory years. But yeah, because one of the reasons it's the glory years is sort of because you can, I don't know, you finally realize I can actually be my authentic self and I really don't care anymore, about what people might think of me or whatever. And you realize the more you are yourself, um the more people actually like you, or I mean, or they don't like you, and that's fine as well. So
Totally agree.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
totally agree. We had a thing in news, and back in years ago, and I've moved it into. I mean, I had a marketing companies, and I always said, be real, raw, and relevant.
Hmm.
Just
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
now that's always the moniker, is like, don't try to overthink it, and just be those things,
Yeah.
or interesting, but be real and raw. And
Yeah.
I and we all of us, I think we gravitate towards that. This is Social media has proven that out. The people, generally speaking, yeah, there's a lot of crafting, and I'm sure there's a lot of people who could argue with me and say, oh, we've modified, we've crafted this, we've marketed this. But I think that grassroots likability, we
Yeah.
see it. We see people that have never would you would never think would be a social media star, an influencer, yet they are.
Yeah.
Why? Because they're real. They're
Yeah.
real people, and
Yeah.
they have real opinions, and they have real feelings, and it's not
Yeah.
curated, it's not crafted, it's just they are, and they end up, and we like that.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
exactly.
so
Yeah.
to your point, yeah, we spend a lot of time not being that, and then we start to realize, like, well, that's actually the best thing to be, just be ourselves, you know.
Yeah, yeah, because I mean, the outside world will always change, but I think, if we're able to like really ground ourselves in terms of who we are, we that's just the way to maintain happiness. Because if it was dependent on how things are going externally and how many people like us or don't like us, then it would be like we would have no direction in life, right? It's sort of like a leaf in the wind, oh, someone likes me, I'm happy. Oh, someone doesn't like me, I guess I'm not happy. Yeah.
I would imagine, and there's probably some psychology to go along with that, and I'm sure you could probably elaborate on that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Well, speaking of mistakes and like evolving and growing and becoming wiser, like can you think about like a time, like let's say, well, maybe we'll segregate this in terms of business and maybe then in personal lives, in terms of
mhm.
business growth, where maybe you or your team had to do something that was rather uncomfortable, and yet it was the right thing to do, and you knew it was the right thing to do in order to grow and yeah, evolve and get to that next level, like for the business or whatever. Like, is there anything in your personal role or as a
Oh,
business?
there's plenty.
Okay.
uh, um, and I'm terrible at it. I'll be blunt. I am. I'm probably, I tend to be. Um, I want to make sure everybody's happy and nice and probably
Yeah.
pleased. And so for me personally, it's something I've had to work on. Honestly,
Hmm.
just having to do the hard. In business or in the workplace, I never had a problem. I've never had a problem doing that.
Okay.
Personally, it's a challenge.
Yeah.
I go back. I there were people that I had to let go in different workplaces, and that was always difficult because unlike, there's probably a lot of there. I think there's a couple different camps on this. I think sometimes when there isn't a fit in the workplace, it's not necessarily the person's problem so much as it is, maybe it's the bosses or it's the leadership uh, responsibility to figure out how they fit in better, right? And
Hmm.
so trying to figure out that it's not just a linear kind of a thing, but it's something that, well, this person's working out, well, they're obviously
Yeah.
aren't cutting that's simplistic.
Yeah.
And so, but sometimes when you do make those moves and you do alter and it still doesn't work out, or you realize somebody's cancerous in an
Yeah.
organization, and actually might, and sometimes those people who are actually high performers but can also be really toxic.
Yeah.
Those are the people where I don't feel bad, but it's still hard saying this isn't going to
Yeah.
work out,
Yeah.
but you have to face it. There was it was probably in the 90s. I don't know if you remember Baz Luhrmann, everybody wears sunscreen. It was kind of a, it's a great piece of, I think, kind of wisdom. Interestingly, it was a song, but it was kind of spoken word, and maybe you remember it, maybe you don't. Anyway, one of the
No.
lines in there, one of the lines in there was, "Do something every day that scares you."
Yeah.
Right, and I always kind of took that as, and those moments when you have to do something uncomfortable are the most. I think I look at it. Those are those moments when it might scare you. It might be something that doesn't feel right, because you want to protect yourself, you want to protect your interests, you want to take care of it, and sometimes those things are those are the big scaries, and
Yeah.
I've learned to kind of like lean into those and say, this is just that. It's just, you got to do something. Sometimes, every day we're probably going to be faced with something that just doesn't feel comfortable to do, but we got to confront it and face the hard.
Yeah.
And that's, and I can think literally, I can think of probably dozens of examples, both personal
Yeah.
and professional, where it was leaning in and facing the hard. Whether,
Yeah.
sometimes in the business world, you see plenty of them. You say, okay, there's a group that maybe we want to do business with. And then maybe you find out something and you're going, ugh, the business could be really good, but their entire ethos is off.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
and yet but business, right? And yeah, but money, but business. And so I think a lot of entrepreneurs have to face those decisions of like, do I take the money? Um, do I go into business? What do I do? How do I deal with this? Do I put that aside? The business would say, well, no, it's all about revenue, and you just got to focus and don't worry about, don't get. But I think when you get more into these relationships and
Yeah.
into more of the investing in businesses and kind of this minutia of not so much as here's a product and we buy a product and we exchange and we go to the store, we buy a thing, or we go to a restaurant. When you get deeper into it, some of these decisions come up. They really do. And you have to
Yeah.
decide who you are and what you want.
Yeah, like I think what you're speaking towards there is like you mentioned it comes down to relationships again, because I think we're talking about like this inner knowing, if you want to call it energy, if you want to call it like instinct or feeling or gut feeling or whatever it might be, like there's something just off. And like you kind of mentioned, you call it ethos, there's something out there that's just not in alignment with
Right.
our values as a company, or yeah. And yeah, that's just as important as, like you say, the numbers or the facts or the knowledge, right? It's
Mhm.
just it's it's something indescribable, and yet something
Yeah.
that we all lean on so much, like in our
Yes,
decision.
it,
Yeah.
it is. And I think I've learned to trust my gut.
Yeah.
I think I have a pretty good gut. And when something doesn't feel right, it probably doesn't feel right. I mean, it doesn't feel right. I've learned to like
Yeah.
say, okay, this isn't going to work,
Yeah.
and trust that instinct over time.
Yeah.
Um, and I think as we get older, and there's some actual science behind it, as our brains change, we, uh, and this is, an Arthur Brooks thing. I don't know if you know who Arthur Brooks is. He
Yeah.
teaches the science of happiness at Harvard. I mean,
Yeah.
he talked about how as we get up to about 75 years old, we get better at seeing big picture stuff.
Mhm.
And so I think as I've seen that and big picture stuff, and I trust my gut more of like, yeah, this doesn't feel right. There's a reason for that. And it's based upon experience, based upon just
Yeah.
how my brain works, how our brains work as we get older. And, and then that leans into the very specifics, which is like, yeah, I don't like the situation. What is it? And how does it need to be better?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so let's like you talked about in the beginning how you start off every day with some contemplative thought or reflection or quiet time, and whatever you call it. And yeah, this is to me like 100% essential for myself as well, for to just state my intentions and gratitude and prayer and whatever it might be for people. So, did you always, I have a feeling you didn't always start your day like that, like when you were kind of young and stupid? Probably not.
No, I think I tried to. But no, not
No.
really. No, I mean, and I think it's just been different stages in my life.
Yeah.
As my kids were younger, I mean, any parent will agree. I mean, you sort of, you could try and have some sense of
Yeah.
like
Yeah, I know.
regularity, but yeah, good luck with that.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think you just you just kind of surf it and kind
Yeah.
of just go with it. And so now, a little bit older, I have an opportunity to you know put in place those boundaries,
Yeah. Yeah.
and those
Yeah.
guardrails, and saying, okay, this is my time, this is everybody else's time, or this is the time I can do these things, and that just keeps me healthier. I don't know that and I applaud any parent who can actually figure that out. I was not that person. So
No, no, same. I used to start off my, yeah, like in the craziest times, if I had quiet time in the morning, I'd be on my computer, email, or, whatever it might be, right?
yeah,
And that doesn't work either. Like that gets you nowhere. So yeah, for those entrepreneurs out there who aren't spending that time, even if you can get 10 minutes, like it's valuable. So, um,
agreed.
so
And
how,
also, I mean, I will say this, that one thing about that period of time is I got really good at managing my time. I will say
yeah,
that
yeah,
because you only had 10
yeah,
minutes here, 15 minutes there. And so you had to be very deliberate
yeah,
about what you did. And I will say, so that was the thing I probably learned through being like
yeah,
a
yeah.
stay-at-home parent. And, even back in my news days, I realized that I only had a window. And if I was going to get something done, I had that. And when you don't have that immediate pressure, I think people tend to like, oh, I'll get it done. And I appreciate that I learned that then of like, I can do it. You've got to be very deliberate. Like, okay, I've got to get this done because this is when I have this opportunity.
Right.
And so if you're thinking about it, just do it. Right.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, good motto. So, okay, so how old are your kids now?
23 and 20
Oh, wow. Okay, so are they still home?
ish.
Yeah. The,
Yes, sort of. Yes, kind of. Yes, for
the,
the most part. No, I mean,
many,
they're with school and and jobs and such, and kind of in that transition period. So
oh, okay. So, but they're sleeping at your house.
yes,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I know. Yeah, no, very similar. Mine are 19, 22, and 24. Kind of,
You're right
yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah. So, yeah, but they're all at home and they're all, yeah, I rarely see them. Yeah.
That's kind of about this. Yeah. Yeah. So I say ish.
So, yeah, exactly. Well, and then how about like, does your job require travel? Like, how is it now to sort of harmonize home and business life? Is it easier now? Is it just as challenging? How is
I,
that?
yeah, it just I think it's an ebb and flow. I haven't well this past 6 months, not as much as I could have, but probably a bit. Again, it and that all just fits in. It's not like I mean I hear these stories. We were talking about a gentleman the other day that we're working with on some funding issues, and he was on the road for like 10 years, 200 days out of the year for 10 years. I mean that's
No,
unheard. I don't know how you would do that.
no,
Um, uh, and so that's to me, that's the extreme. Nowhere anywhere near that.
no.
I mean, we've got some projects that are. I mean, our projects are close to home right now.
Okay,
As we expand out, these parks we're building. One is in Utah, one is in Wyoming, and we've got 8, 9 other locations that are not um, under development yet, but we've identified. And so those two locations are within driving range
okay, great.
for us.
Yeah,
And so it's if it's Wyoming, it's a 5-hour drive. It's a go out, spend a few days, come
yeah,
back kind of a thing.
yeah.
So that hasn't been too challenging. So,
Okay. Well, I want to ask more about those parks in a second, but just to keep on
okay.
the other like more like partner dad conversation here. So
Yeah.
did your wife always work as well
Yeah.
or okay.
Yes. Yeah,
Mm.
she did.
So
She does. Yeah. So yeah, she professional. So she was a
yeah.
graduated in pharmacy, and she was a
Okay.
pharmacy, and
Yeah.
then and then did that, and then in medical informatics, and has been in the kind of the tech side of life for a long time. So
Oh geez. Okay. Yeah, so
yeah,
her life is demanding as well.
it is. It is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. So yeah, it requires some conversation between the two of you then,
It
right?
is. Well, and and to be transparent, I mean, we've actually we're actually separated, but but
Okay.
we were together for 30 years, and it's actually
Wow.
been. Yeah, I'd like to say. I mean, it's been an interesting period of time, but also healthy in its own way. So
Yeah.
that's a personal thing, but it's
Yeah.
yeah, she's kind of a tech superstar, and she's really very, she's a very talented person.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
so
Yeah. No, thanks.
yeah,
Thanks.
no, yeah, so that, balancing, I mean, throwing that into the mix has been, uh,
Oof.
it's,
Yeah.
it has its moments, and and then again, if I'm being completely transparent, we know, and I think I have personally, as I see parents who have had kids with certain challenges. I mean, I've had kids with some medical conditions. I mean, some significant
Mm,
medical conditions, and having to go through that and deal with that on a 24/7 basis for a number of years, was
wow.
not the, in addition to everything else, is not the easiest. And so you just do your best to get through it and
Yeah.
support them the best way you can. And so I'd like to say I think we're on the other side of most of that now. So,
Okay,
um,
great. No,
so
I appreciate you sharing that because,
yeah,
it's not like this is life. Like you're right. This is
yeah,
real life. It's
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So,
you've got to. I mean, if you're responsible to people, and and you show up, and um, depending upon if you have partners that know you and know you well, they can be
yeah.
there for you. But not everybody has that latitude in the workplace. You don't know what's
Yeah.
going on in somebody's life, and I think that's
I know.
I that's why I think an empathetic approach to people
Mhm.
and is just the best way to go, because you don't know what somebody's going through.
No, no, so true. I mean, myself as a therapist, I think that's something that I try to educate, my clients that are in the room is sort of, because it's so easy to get into the me narrative, like this is only happening to me. And you're
Mhm.
on that hamster wheel of me, all about me, all about me. And that's gonna really make you not want to get out of bed in the morning. You have to start realizing that there's a lot of people out there suffering, not to make that, mean that your suffering is less. It's just sort of like um the best thing to do is instead is to realize that, like, yeah, we are just all humans and we're trying to do our best. We're all flawed. None of our lives are perfect, and if you think your neighbor's life is perfect, you really don't know anything. And in saying that, yeah, give people the compassion they deserve, right? Like, just, a simple smile, a simple, yeah, I mean, bringing humor into any situation as much as you can. It's a huge stress relief, and just this too shall pass, right? It's
Mhm.
like nothing's permanent, and but when you're in it, it's really hard to see that. But that's when you get
Mhm.
support. I mean, I hope, have you gotten
Yeah,
support?
no. Oh yeah,
Yeah,
and it's also learning how to ask for help, and ask for,
yeah,
and realize, and then being able to lean on, individuals in your life that are there for you. I think I've played that role for a lot of people, and I think I was, I mean, I was there for a lot of people, and I have been. It was just kind of in my nature, and
yeah,
you know, but also the flip of that, having to ask for it, or having just to be able to say, hey, can we chat about this, or I just
yeah,
need to vent, or whatever.
yeah,
I've had to, that's one of those hards. I've had to
yeah.
say, no, I'm going to ask for something that doesn't feel normal to me, to ask
Right.
for help.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I was gonna say, especially as a man, like, I mean, not to be stereotypical, but I mean, I honestly feel like from a physiological sense, it's
mm.
more difficult for a man to ask for help than it is for a woman. Um,
Well,
women's,
and I would say masculine and feminine probably is
yeah,
there's, the masculine sensibilities and the feminine sensibilities. I mean, I think we have both. I think the more
yes.
masculine sensibility is exactly that. So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I'm glad it was worthwhile for you then to make yourself uncomfortable in that way, and and ask for help in those times, and then be help to
thanks.
others when they need it. It's like, yeah, give back.
Thank you. Thank you.
So
Well, yeah, truly, truly.
Yeah. Well, okay, talking about giving back, let's bring it back to business and these parks that you mentioned. Like, I want to find out more about that in the beautiful Utah area.
We so they're called Valley Forge Impact Parks.
Mm.
And they've kind of evolved, really. We had an idea of what they might look like 2 years ago that's changed as we've kind of modified our understanding of the landscape, and some of the things going on in the world have sort of impacted that. And now we always went in with a sense of making these parks um, the highest, the highest, at the highest level of sustainability, um, and being green. We want to get to that carbon negative.
Mm.
And it's interesting. I will say this is that I mean, let me I'll make one sort of jaunt into something, and that is, I very much wish that sustainability wasn't political. And I know that's fantasy thinking because everything's political, but I, the people, everybody I talk to, when you minus the platitudes and everything else, generally speaking, even in a very conservative state like Utah, most people are coming around like, yeah, we like living in a nice place. We like breathing clean air. We like having clean water. We don't like these things. And and then you balance it out with, well, we also like growth, sustainability, and a
Mm.
burgeoning economy. And people are starting to, I think, see that. But I wish we could move a little bit past that and get the conversation down the road a little bit. And I think it's sort of happening in parts. And I say that because we come at this is that if you look at us as a group, and the different backgrounds, you'd probably be surprised at, kind of some of the backgrounds. But we're into it, and we're like, no, this is the right thing to do. This is the best for our communities and for our country and for the world, is that we need to start thinking in these terms. We only have so many resources.
Yeah.
And single use things are, yes, we can use them, and we are, humanity's a great success story, and sometimes we tend to get over our skis, if you will, and we do things that probably are really bad for us. And maybe without thinking about it, yes, industry has done some really horrible things, and yes, it's also done some wonderful things. I mean,
Hmm.
it's also advanced society. So you have to we tend to be pragmatic, but we see our goal is like, okay, well, these parks need to be this. Why? Because that's important to us. Why? Because these parks are going to be situated likely in more rural communities, and we want them to be a gem in that community. We don't want them to be this industry where everybody goes, oh, it smells, it stinks, it does all these things. No, it needs to work within the community. It needs to be something that they're proud of, because likely they're going to be working there, they're going to be living there, and this needs to contribute. Each of these communities needs to be a place where any of us could say, oh, I would live there. I'd have my parents live there. That's how we go with these things. We're looking at them um, as antithetical, I guess, to your typical business park. We're not going to build big boxes and just maximize space and maximize this. We can make plenty of money doing different things and doing different arrangements, and it'll be fine. Money is important, and making it financially sound is important, but it's not the most important thing. The most important thing is that this works.
Yeah.
And so we're balancing our approach I'd like to think is to how we're going about this, is that yes, we want to make really good profits for our investors, but and hit those marks. But we also think it's important that if we can spend more money on certain pieces of infrastructure that ensure that the community is safe and that
Hmm.
it's clean, or whatever we're doing, then we do that. But it's
Hmm.
also so coming back, what's informed our notion of this is we're going to bring together businesses that have natural synergy and that
Mm.
work together. So instead of just taking anybody who's going to come in and want to build, we are actually shopping for
Okay.
companies that will work in partnership. So, for example, I
Okay.
mentioned one of our anchor tenants will be American Spec Industries. So this would
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
we'll have an American Spec Industries factory
Mhm.
at each location. Well, we've got to rail in or bring in via, truck trash. Well, that's obviously a concern. So the way we build our facilities is that all of
Okay.
this is done indoors. So
Okay.
it captures it indoors and it dumps. But as I mentioned, we use about 65% of what would be in a landfill, right?
Okay.
Well, there are other companies out there that'll take another 30% of that. And
Mm.
this is typically in the waste to energy space. So
Mhm.
waste to hydrogen, waste to direct energy. They are looking at more organic waste. And so what ASI can't use, they can use. And
Mm.
so it makes sense in, it makes sense to have them working together on
Yeah.
the same plot of land. And
Yeah.
then each company would independently build, if they were to go, would build a thing called a MRF, which is a municipal reclamation facility. So it's basically breaks up the trash and
Mm.
sorts it and stuff. Well, instead of having two of them, we'd have one of them.
Mhm.
And then you get efficiency between the two, and then you're really tackling two problems all
Mhm.
at once. And instead of us having to then take this piece of waste and then re-push off another 30%, or however we do that, well, this allows us to almost consume most of whatever comes into us, minus probably some glass and some metals, of which then we can then also push that off to another recycling. So
Wow.
it's thinking about in terms of like what companies are going to work together, and then looking at what they're producing and the technologies they're producing. So then it's okay. Well, then the obvious things are solar
Yeah.
and what can we do in wind and solar and geothermal on each of our locations, because each location is going to be unique. In our location in Utah, we sit on a pretty good geothermal pocket.
Mm.
About 90 miles south of us is the largest geothermal project going in North America.
Wow.
Um, they're going to produce out of a really relatively small footprint, about 800 megawatts of energy out
Hmm.
of geothermal, all geothermal. Um, it's called Fervo is the project. They've already, you know, signed power purchase agreements with, I believe, Alphabet and with uh, one of the energy or one of the utilities in Southern California.
Hmm.
So that's how substantial, and we sit on that same, landscape. And so that's that location. Other locations might be more conducive to, say, wind or maybe even solar. And so we're looking at each of our locations about how we can bring in a massive amount of power, um, and be a high powered facility or a park, so that we've got a lot of power. So maybe up in the a gigawatt or 2 gigawatt range. So then that will allow us to bring in and another anchor tenant, which would be a data center. And data centers are in, we have the most in the world right now. The U.S. does, and we don't have anywhere near what we need in order to meet the growing demand of AI.
Hmm.
And so there's a lot of demand to make data centers that are renewable. So it fits with us to build these centers that are, eventually 100% renewable. I mean, there are certain constraints. There's, baseline power issues, and there are all kinds of things, but we're all moving that direction. So our goal is like, okay, we're going to get it as sustainable as possible right out of the gate, knowing that some places it's just not possible to bring in that amount of infrastructure quickly. I mean, this is
Yeah.
a 5 to 10 year project, and so it's getting it there. That's our impetus is, okay, high power, and then who does that attract? Well, we want high power manufacturers. So that could be a lot of these companies who are building or assembling materials that are for this industry, whether it's you know
Hmm.
and whether it's you know we're making the one product, the composite product at ASI. There are other groups that are taking it and making different kinds of composite materials that would be very interesting too. They would, and they all require a lot of power. The data center thing is interesting in my opinion because, depending upon the size of the data center, it can and it will provide really good jobs, really good high paying
Mhm.
jobs for a particular geography. And my belief is that, if you in rural America, if you set up a data center, some would say, oh, well, they're not trained. I disagree with that completely. I think my experience of people who are living and working in rural America are phenomenal people, and they've got all the right human skills or the soft
Yeah.
skills in
Yeah.
place. They can be trained. They can learn what they
Right.
need to do specifically, but they've
Yeah.
got a work ethic that
Yeah.
typically, in my
Yeah.
experience, that is that
Yeah.
is is really good. And so I
Yeah.
think these data centers will work in these rural areas. And I think what it'll do is it'll help the local economies. It's going to help these people out. And an average data center right now isn't going to shock a small town.
No.
It's not going to be oh my gosh, we're coming in with thousands of jobs. It's going to be 50, 100, a couple hundred jobs, something that usually most communities can deal with. So
Hmm.
that's another one of our considerations, is we can't overwhelm these communities with jobs. And we
Right.
also have to be mindful of, well, do we have enough people to support these things, and how is that going to work? And so we're having to look at all of these issues as we are picking our locations and solving this. So
Interesting. It
and
sounds
and
very
all of it is around let's make business parks that are carbon negative and are truly the gems of a region.
wow. Um, that's super exciting. I'm glad we went over that because I didn't realize that was part of, everything else that you guys are doing. Um,
Yeah.
I'm guessing, and I know we'll have to end here soon, but I'm guessing, like, where did you guys get your models for that? Was it more like what the Europeans perhaps are doing, the ones that are
Yeah,
really
I mean, I think it's just been for us, it's just been
just an idea, a dream?
I just sort of just going forward and just figuring out what works. I mean,
Okay,
yes, I mean, yeah, I mean, we're looking at the world and what's working in
right.
certain places, and what are certainly in European and certainly European areas, they've become really good at this. And so
Yeah,
yes, that's going to influence us. But each locale is going to have its unique flavor, and so we're
right.
trying to adopt that. Our premise, really simply, is just we have a problem in America. We don't have enough power. Brownouts and blackouts are going to become more common. Our
Mm,
grid is incredibly fragile. Most people don't recognize how fragile it is. We turn on our lights, we go about our day, we charge our phones, we plug in our computers and our lights, and everything just seems to work. That is, it's going to become, and I'm not, trying to be like, oh, doom is coming.
fear
It's just you
mongering,
look at
yeah.
yeah, you look at the infrastructure and you realize what a problem it actually is.
Mhm.
Any of the AI people are going to say we need, it's going to be trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars in infrastructure in the next 5, 7 years just to meet the demand. You have people like NVIDIA's chief saying now, and we've heard this, Bill Gates has said it, Sam Altman has said it, that nuclear is going to be one of those things that that we're going to have to figure out really quickly, and how to bring it online quicker in order to meet the growing demand, or we're going to start facing these issues. I
Mhm.
mean, and as developers, as we've gone into this, we're starting to recognize how big of, and that's how we've gotten into it. It's
Mhm.
like, wait a minute, what do you mean we can't get power from here to here, or it's going to take 5 to 7 years? Well, that's ridiculous.
Yeah,
And we're sort of saying, well, we're not going to wait on these
no.
giant entities to try and solve it. So we're like, well, how do we solve it ourselves? And that's
Mm,
what's informed our modeling, is like, how do we go solve this, and not waiting on others to help, solve it. Like, how do we get around the red tape
mhm.
and get to where we need to be, and then solve what we're trying to solve ultimately. And
Well,
it's a huge lift. So, but we're trying. That's how
but
that's how we're coming up with a model.
but those are the best inventions. Those are the best creations, right? Based on a need.
Yeah,
It's not
yeah,
just like a hypothetical, oh, maybe they'll like this, or maybe somebody
yeah.
will like this. It's sort of, yeah. So,
Now, last year this time, if we would have talked great in depth about power, I would have said, yeah, it's probably an issue. Now I can tell you wholeheartedly, the more and more and more I've jumped into this space, the more I'm baffled and then I'm not. I mean, I get it. I understand why we're here where we are, but we're going to do our best to help fix it where we can.
Great. Yeah. Yeah. It's important to bring awareness, to the audience in this sense too. It's sort of like, yeah, it's something we take for granted every single day. But
Mhm.
it's based on our resources, and which are, yeah, dwindling.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
well, thanks for sharing
You're
that,
welcome.
and
You're
thanks
welcome.
for everything today, for coming on,
Thank
and
you.
yeah, it was fun.
It's been a
So,
pleasure.
okay, well, I'm sure we're going to keep in touch. And anybody who wants to know more about this amazing company and their fund, and um, yeah, just you can find. I'll have all the links in the show notes, and yeah. So,
Well, it's truly been a pleasure. I really appreciate it.
well, same, likewise. It was my pleasure, and it's what we
Thank
do here, mixing business with
Well,
pleasure. So,
thank you so
okay,
much.
you're welcome. Have a great week, everyone. Bye bye. Thanks for tuning in to this episode. Remember that you can watch the full episode on YouTube, where I plan to hang out the most. Your feedback and suggestions for future guests are incredibly valuable to me, so please don't hesitate to post a comment. You are an integral part of this journey.